Hi, I'm Brian with Pioneer Builders. Today, let's talk about insulation types, decisions made, and double checking to make sure everything's done right. What makes this house interesting is, as with so many of our houses, it's built on a slope. So this one actually has a slab on grade. Watch the other videos I did on the Halo Subterra. I've done 2 videos on that so far. So we've got concrete slab on grade. We have wood framed walls. We also have a ceiling over the garage where there's living space. And then we have a cathedral ceiling. We have a spot for a mechanical area. And then we will end up having blown-in insulation. So there's a lot of different types of insulation in here, and I think it's a good example. And then there's actually one spot that we use spray foam. But before you tar and feather me, I'll give a little explanation about that. Let's go inside, take a look at what we've done. As with so many things in construction, eventually things get concealed, but you just have to trust me that under here is some sub-slab insulation. You saw the video before, hopefully, or go back and watch it. But behind here we had that vertical insulation. Now you can see how it finishes out. Anybody looking at this would think it was just a conventional wall, especially because these guys were furred in. Now we did have some insulation repairs that were supposed to be done. Doesn't look like the guys have gotten here yet. But let me just show you one thing as far as your QA/QC that you might have. The batt insulation is supposed to touch all 6 sides of a stud cavity. So you've got your sheathing, your inside faces of both of your studs, and then your drywall. So you can't see most of that, but what you can see here is all of this stud that's exposed. That should be lofted out or fluffed into place. And it is really easy for a lot of that not to get done. The easiest thing is to just jam it in and keep on moving. So look for that if you're going to be doing your own insulation installation or inspection. All right, let's head upstairs and take a look at what we've got going on up there. Now we're in the great room, and if you cast your eyes upwards, you can see we've done a different type of insulation, not different type as far as fiberglass, but basically what we have is we have air intakes at the eaves and exhaust up at the ridge. And they put baffles on the underside of the sheathing, followed by the insulation, and then we'll have that layer of drywall. Really bad job up there. They did so much work, and that's what makes it difficult. It's not easy. Insulation is just not one of those jobs. It's a super fun job to do, but it's just not done well. Let me show you probably the worst thing in this house that they did, and at some point we might change over to using wafers everywhere. I think I've talked to the electrician before, but sometimes we use cans, sometimes we use those wafer lights. But when you look up around the cans, a lot of these were just absolutely shoved in, the insulation. And then in this spot, it doesn't even come up and touch the can. You can see all the way through to that baffle. So thankfully, we've got a really nice insulation company. I was able to get a hold of the salesperson, and they're going to be out. But let me just digress for a moment. Here's another really cool thing. Our HERS rater, who's doing the Energy Star work on this house, gave me a really nice report with some of the problems in this place. I was able to take his email, send it over to Chris, and they're going to get this taken care of. So it's sort of like an inspection on the insulation for our purposes. This house actually did pass code. And that happens from time to time. But ultimately, we're the ones who are responsible for the house when it's in service. And I don't want to have any problems with our homeowners. All right, let me show you. There's actually 4 other ceiling treatments to this house that we're going to take a look at. Okay, in this particular area up here, this is where we have our 2 of our mechanical units. We've got an indoor ducted unit for our mini split system. And then we also have our ERV up there. Now before you get too wound up, we're in climate zone 4C, it's pretty temperate, and this is what we found to be successful when it comes to air distribution for heating and cooling for a portion of the house. So we do a lot of different solutions in our homes, but I'll talk a little bit more about spray foam downstairs. Just not a big fan of spray foam, and this is a pretty efficient way to build. But anyway, what you have to do is have your full depth insulation underneath where you're going to have those mechanical units. We're in the attic now. So we went from the sub-slab, the walls, some cathedral ceiling. I think there might only be 3 other ceiling areas to talk about. No, there is 4. I remembered. Stream of consciousness a little bit there. So we've got bad insulation here, but if you look up here, there is no insulation. Why not? Because that's where we're going to actually have blown-in fiberglass insulation. We found fiberglass to be very good. Relatively speaking, it's pretty good as far as the carbon of it is, and it's inexpensive. Now, if I remember right, when you blow in insulation, you actually need a little bit more depth in order to achieve the R value that you're looking for. In our climate zone, we're going to R60 in the 2021 code. So we'll have to figure out what our R value per inch is. Might have to change some things. This house is vested under the 2015 code. We only need R49 here. In the cathedral part, it's R38. We do that by using, I think they're high density bats to get the R value, and 2x12s for the rafters. Let me show you another ceiling in here. Just wanted to show you this ceiling. You might have seen it finished on our other homes before, but we call this a hip tray, and that'll end up getting blown in insulation. But I also wanted to show you over here, again in Washington State, we have to insulate our hot water lines. I've shot a couple of videos when it comes to water heat and water heat distribution. So anyway, there's hot water lines that are insulated. Again, we're trying to prevent heat loss in this particular case. Depending on the time of year, it changes whether it's heat loss or heat gain that you're trying to control by insulation. All right, we have 2 more ceilings to take a look at. Now we're in the garage, and really what we're doing is we're separating the unconditioned space of the garage from the conditioned space up above. I don't know if you could tell from the architecture from the outside, but this is that. It's a split entry, or a mid-entry might sound a little bit better, but because of the slopes, this is how we built the house. And now you basically have a floor for what's up above there. And so we had to insulate this with bad insulation. So really it's floor insulation from in here. It kind of looks like ceiling, but it would be the same thing as if it was a crawl space, is how this ends up getting treated, with the exception that we will have that 5/8 layer of gypsum drywall, gypsum wallboard, as far as fire is concerned from a garage separation. Okay, now the last one. We did use a little bit of spray foam. Now before you just go, oh, every house should be foam free, and I understand the sentiment. In Washington State, we're required to use spray foam that uses HFO or hydrofluoroolefin, not HFC, hydrofluorocarbon. I'm not a huge fan of using spray foam, but I do think there's a time and a place for it. And if you do have to use it, you might look into what type you're using and opt for the one that's better for the environment. In this particular case, when you look at what the roof line looks like outside, there was no real good way to get that vented. And actually, where the thermal envelope stops is at the beam that runs across here. So we technically didn't need to have any insulation in there, but I was just a little uneasy because there's going to be some drywall attached to it. And so really, there will be some thermal benefit for the garage, but there's also going to be vapor protection on the underside of that roof sheathing. It's a very minimal amount of area, but it's what I decided made sense in this location. Well, that brings us to the end of our video. We covered a lot of things as far as the insulation, different types, and then also some things to look for as far as your QA/QC program. Really appreciate you watching, making it all the way through the video, and we'll see you next time on The Build Show.